Hello my fellow knights and warriors, and welcome to the next part of my videos about Norman Saga. And today I am going to focus on buildings. I will talk about ordinary buildings like farms or tents. I'm not going to talk about fortifications because this is another cup of tea and I will cover them in another video because there will be too much stuff about them, so I don't want to mix it all together. So here you can see two different buildings that we might face in our battles. First is a typical farm and the second is tent. So let's talk about farm first. Here you can see a wall. We have two types of wall here. One is a building wall. The building wall is the one that is adjacent to the floor hexes. So all these gray hexes are house interior. This is marked as floor. And all these walls that are not adjacent to the house interior and are wide are low wall. This wall is impassable. You cannot get through the wall inside the building, but this wall is actually passable. So we will have to cover all of this. So let's start with moving. In your movement phase you can move through the low wall, but you need to spend 3 movement points to move through such a wall. So for example, Kamal here can spend 3 movement points and go onto this hex with ease. And same goes to horsemen. They can also jump above the wall. This is free for them, but they cannot end their movement on the hex with wall. I guess it makes sense because you cannot simply stand with your horse on the wall like that. You have to move and you have to be on one side of the wall, while leg warrior can simply climb on the wall, horse warrior cannot. Next, to get inside the building there are 2 ways: simply via door like here, or through window. You can see these brown areas here. These are windows. You can move through the window by spending 4 movement points, but only if you are foot warrior. You cannot move through window when you are mounted warrior. I guess it makes sense. And sometimes a building might have 2 levels. As you can see here we have a staircase, and to get here in this barn you need to use staircase, and you cannot move through staircase when you are on horse. I guess it makes sense as well. In general, mounted warriors cannot move inside any kind of building. No matter if it is tent or house, you can simply move outside. So for example, this Amvar here can move at last there. He cannot move on this hex anymore. Of course, if there will be an enemy here, there can be a combat, but he cannot get inside the building. So this is another reason for that you might sometimes think that dismounting isn't that bad idea. And now tents. To get inside the tent you have to move through the tent entrance. There is usually only one tent entrance in every tent. You can see it here, and to get inside you have to go through the entrance. You cannot get through the tent normally, but yes, there is another way. You can spend all your turn doing nothing by ripping a tent apart. This is possible. You have to declare it during your movement phase when you are adjacent to the tent that you are going to rip the tent. If you are doing so, you can enter the tent hex, or alternatively you can attack enemy who is inside that tent. Now, about the effects on combat. Let's start with windows. As you can see, we have several windows here, and you can shot through the window inside or outside. But there is one important difference between shooting through the window and shooting normally. When you are shooting through the window, you have to trace your line of sight, not from your hex, but from the window. So, if here you have a window, so you have to trace your line of sight from this brown area, not from the middle of the hex. This is a first important difference. Next, when you are shooting through the window, you can only fire at the units that you can see, but you cannot fire on the enemy who is right on the other side of the window. So, for example, if this Arab warrior would be here, then Alaric wouldn't be able to fire at him. But again, there is one more important exception from this rule. Mounted warriors. Since mounted warriors cannot move through the window, they can be fired through the window even if they are on the hex which is adjacent to the window normally. Next, if you are firing from outside, inside the building, you can do so, but again, line of sight is limited by the window. So you cannot trace your line of sight, for example, like that. You can only fire on the hexes that the line of sight where the line of sight is crossing the window. So yet another thing you have to take care of. And if you are firing on the character which is inside the building and you are firing through the window, then your target always benefits from medium cover. Now, you can also fight through the window if your characters are both leg characters. Like I said, mounted warriors cannot attack through the window, but leg warriors can. But it's not easy, and I wouldn't suggest it as long as you have no other options. Because when you are fighting through the window, then defender has plus and attacker gets minus. This means that if you are attacking through the window, you get 2 negative shifts. So something that would be very bad. So for example, Abd Allah attacking him would have 6 minus 6, it will be 0. And then there will be 2 negative shifts. So we will be not even 5 minus 1, but less than minus 5. The worst result possible. So I wouldn't be you. I wouldn't be you if I would attack through the window. Something you'd rather avoid. Now, you can freely attack through the doorway. It is again something which is allowed, but if character defends through the doorway, he gets plus. So again, something which is very good for a defender, and in general you can already tell that the buildings are very good when you are defending against numerous enemies. And now about tents. Tents are interesting case. If you are inside the tent, you can be targeted by the enemy in the hand-to-hand combat only if he is inside the tent, like that, or if he ripped the tent apart. For example, he spent his entire movement into making his way inside the tent, or if you are on the tent entrance and he is on the adjacent hex. So this is a situation where he can attack you, but normally, sorry for moving this overlay, but if there will be a situation like that, then he wouldn't be able to attack Jacques. And when it comes to range attacks, well, this is yet another situation. You can fire at the enemy who is inside the tent if you are firing through the door entrance. So, for example, Hamid tries to fire at Jacques. His line of sight crosses the entrance of the tent. So this is good, and he can fire at him normally. But if he would be there and he would fire at him from this direction, there will be heavy cover for him. Otherwise, it is simply a light cover. But here, firing through the tent wall, it will be heavy cover. Not a very good idea. So, next, corners. Some buildings have corners, and when character is next to the corner, he might use this corner as a cover, but only from one direction. What it means? Let's say that he's targeted by these two archers. So he says that he's on this side of the building, so when this archer fires at him, he gets no cover, but when this archer fires at him, he gets medium cover. So you have always declare from which direction you are using a corner when you are a target of the attack from multiple directions. If there is only one attack from one direction, you are alright. But when it is crossfire, like here, you have to declare which part of the corner protects you. So, that should be all when it comes to the buildings and their use in Norman Saga. Like I said, these are simply ordinary buildings. No any kind of fortifications, because fortifications are another cup of tea, and I will cover them in one of my later videos. As for today, that should be all.